Alright, so we touched on poly painting already in the basics course, and we even touched on poly painting on a flat plane, which is kind of like drawing. We're going to expound on that a little bit, but just as a quick refresher, I'm going to go into my simple brush here. We're going to go into plane 3D, drag it out, go into edit mode, make polymesh 3D. And then so we get some resolution on here, because if we change our standard brush to RGB, turn on Z add, and then go to our subtool, turn on the colorize, and now if we start painting on here, it's going to be pretty low res. I'm going to go down here to geometry. Now if I just hit divide, you're going to see the corners are going to kind of get soft. It's not a huge deal, but if you want, you can turn off smooth modifier and then divide this up. Let's get divided up to about 1,000,000 points, and it's ZBrush, so 1,000,000 points isn't going to really hamper it that much. And now we can start drawing. We can also tap X to go across X symmetry. We can take our transform menu, and we can go across to X and Y symmetry. X, Y, and Z symmetry is not going to do anything because it's a flat plane, but if you're drawing on a sphere, you could have Z symmetry as well. You can also do radial symmetry, and for that one, you're going to want to do Z symmetry, because if you turn your floor on, you're going to see the Z plane, the blue line is going straight out, so that's the Z symmetry plane. Now, if you remember from the masking basics, the brush basics, we were able to utilize alpha, so if you want to change up your stroke a little bit, you can go in here to your alpha with like a square brush, and let's go ahead and just do X symmetry radial count, or radial symmetry off. So you can do kind of a square alpha, and if you want to make it more brush strokey, you can go down to the brush menu, or I'm sorry, the alpha menu, modify, and you see you can change your streak length. So go and watch those videos if you want to do that. Also, we have my startup materials matcap gray. If you want to paint on just a flat color, you can change it to a flat color. Or if you want something a little easier on the eyes, you can change it to, say, maybe a skin shader 4, or you can stick with flat color and then just fill it with maybe a gray, so color, fill object, and now you can just start drawing. So let's say we want to make just a little thumbnail. Now when we're drawing on here, our subdivision level is set to 6. If you wanted to use like Sculptris Pro mode, you'd have to kill your subdivision history, but the cool thing is if you wanted to use Sculptris Pro, you'll automatically get more resolution as you draw. We'll get more into that later when we get into this hard surface polygroup it stuff. But for now, we'll just keep it simple. Now remember, you can hold down C, or you can just tap C while hovering over a color. You can go through here, and we can clean up the silhouette a little bit. You can also hold down, or we have lazy radius turned on, so if we go into our stroke menu here, we do have a lazy mouse on for our standard brush by default is set to 1, so it kind of smooths your stroke out a little bit. If you wanted to smooth that even more, you can crank that up. Or you can have it cranked up and then tap L to toggle it off. So while you're in here, you can hold down Shift, and you can cut in straight lines. Or if you prefer, you can turn your lazy mouse on, crank your lazy radius down pretty low, and then if you hold down Shift, you'll get this line, and you can just cut straight across. Now if you want to blur anything, you can hold down Shift, and you're going to see with the smooth brush, which is a modifier, is going to turn Z-add on. If you only want to smooth the RGB information, turn Z-add off, and now you can just smooth and blur this out. However, sometimes it is useful to smooth just the deformations out, and why I say that is if we go into our move brush here, let's turn off RGB, and just like in Photoshop, you can have liquify and stuff, and you're just pulling the geometry around. If I turn the polyframe on, you're going to see what I'm doing. Instead of using liquify, we can go through here, and we can make modifications just pushing this geometry around. And we have our camera snapped to this front plane. It's only going to really move in that Z axis. So if we turn polyframe back off, and now if we hold down Shift and we just smoothen the Z-add, it'll go ahead and relax that geometry back out. Of course, it's pretty high resolution, so I'm going to switch to smooth stronger, turn RGB off. That's still pretty high. Let's drop this down to, like, say, subdivision level 2. There we go. So we can smooth this back out. And we didn't lose any resolution because we can just go back up and we got our drawing back. So always remember, you can drop your resolution way down. You can make changes however you'd like. You can hold down Shift to smooth just the geometry, or if you want, Shift to smooth geometry and RGB, depending on what look you're going for. And you can always go back up in resolution. Now you're not stuck to just black and white or gray or anything like that. Of course, you can choose any color. We'll switch back over to standard brush here. And if you want to do even crazier things, remember you have a whole bunch of brushes and brush types in here that you can mess with. So we'll go ahead and hit S for spiral over here, BSA, and you can go through here and you can spiral this geometry out. You can hold down Alt if you want to. And again, you make all the changes that you want, then you can drop down to resolution number 2, hold down Shift to just smooth out your Z-add, and then you can smooth it back out to what you had before. And then go back up, We switch back to our standard brush here. Let's go ahead and say standard brush clone, and then I'm going to change this to a drag dot. We can go and grab different types of alphas. Tap C to grab this color, and now we can just drag these alphas around. Let's go ahead and change our focal shift down to -100. So now we can just go through and just drag. Now if you hold down Alt, that'll be your alternate color here. So if you want to, you can switch this color, tap C to be your background color, and then switch the color again. So when you hold down Alt, that'll dig in, and we let go of Alt, that'll add. And feel free to bring in your own alphas. You know, these alphas are going to be found in C, Program Files, Pixelogic, ZBrush 2018, under the alphas folder. Of course, you can put these wherever you'd like. We talked about that in the Lightbox video. You can go in here, and we'll talk about multi-alpha brushes later. But for now, we'll just pick some big, simple alphas here. You can even go in here and paint with patterns. Grab a couple of those, and all I'm doing is just double-clicking. Now, if your alpha ever doesn't go into alpha, it goes into texture, that means that your alpha probably wasn't saved in the proper format. Ideally, your alpha should be saved as 16-bit grayscale, and that'll auto-populate in your alphas. If they're saved as like 8-bit RGB, it'll probably end up going into your textures folder. Speaking of textures, you can also paint with those as well, which we demonstrated in the poly painting video. So if I double-click this one now, it's going to go down here to my texture. So here's my alphas here with the 16-bit grayscales, and then here's my textures in here. With this texture loaded, I can drag dot with this texture, or we can change this to a drag rect, and we can drag it out like so. We can drop our RGB intensity down if we'd like. Change it to any stroke we want to. We can spray this on there if we want. We can just drag it out. If you turn that texture off and grab the alphas, you can see we're painting with this dark color, but when we drag this out, we're painting through that alpha now. So just like before, we can spray through that alpha. We can drag dot that alpha around. We can drag rect.